And I don't care. Had this shirt on yesterday. Okay. Alright, so I just finished a video about my tarot pet peeves. This is going to be a short video, hopefully, because I've done like 80 minutes of like videos today. But this is going to be a video on like certain kind of decks that I just like haven't delved into that much, or like am not pulled to. So the first thing is I just got the box of emotions, and so this is kind of relatively new for me as a deck kind of category. I normally, when I get decks, I separate them by planet because I like to read by planet. If you go back far enough, I was reading by planet per month, and then I just did quarterly, and then I just stopped. It's exhausting, you know, to do that and then 1 or 2 views. Fuck that. I'll probably go back to it. But yeah, emotion cards that deal with emotions or describe emotions, I haven't really delved into them, and I think because I'm starting to really do heavy psychological work, mental work, I do want cards that are like that. I do like color theory as well, so processing emotions in that way is just something that's very interesting to me, because I feel like I'm thinking about the last video I did. I'm like, somebody's not gonna like that shit. Like, if it ever finds its way like on the ether on the ethers, it's gonna be like, what, bitch? Like, got my eyesight for you. But anyway, these emotion decks, I don't feel like there's that many of them out there on the market. Like, there's color decks. Usually they're associated with crystals. But emotions decks, I think this would be a really interesting conversation to have with someone who doesn't speak English, or speaks English as like a second language, doesn't grow up in an English Anglophone kind of culture, because I would be very curious to what colors and what words as far as emotions are being described. Like, how would a deck in like Japanese when it comes to like emotions be versus like a French, versus like a Swahili, versus like Russian, versus like Spanish, versus like English. I don't know, I'm kind of curious about that. Like, what kind of healing would you have? I remember talking to the guy that spiritually awakened me about this, because like he's partially from a different culture. And I was like talking to him about like, when it comes to like language, like medicalized language, does the language that the indigenous people speak, does it even have a capacity to be transliterated medically into something that that can be helpful, right? Like, are there words in your culture to describe anger or to describe sadness? Like, if your culture lacks a lot of, I don't say lacks, but when compared to other languages, it lacks maybe words of nuance, words of contrast, words like comparative, words that deals with like percentages or hierarchies or levels of pressure or levels of stress or sequentials or stuff like that. Like, if your concept of good and evil it has nothing to do with good or evil, has to like day and night, sun and moon, what does that do to how you can psychologically talk about things? And so this is the kind of stuff that turns me on. You can tell I'm like such a Gemini cusp. But yeah, like, I was just thinking about that, and I was asking him that. He was like, no, man, I never thought of that. Like, of course you did. Of course you did. But yeah, so I was thinking about that. So this box of emotions, I think I would love to see other languages, and not just like this was done in English and then we're just gonna make the translation, the closest translation in French, the closest translation in like Japanese, like emotions that like kind of are resonant within that culture. I would like to see that. Yeah. So there's that. Other decks. Other decks as far as I've tried some other decks. So things like sacred geometry, so like mandalas or fractals or stuff like that. Like I'm less into the mandalas, I'm less into sacred geometry, I'm less into shapes. I just feel like I'm just not there anymore. Sacred symbology, not really my thing. So I haven't really gotten any more decks. Like I think I have a sacred geometry, I think it's called like sacred geometry deck or something like that. And it's like a 1 and a 2, like it's 2 different decks. Like I've gotten that. The only other deck that I can see, and it's not even sacred geometry, but it's called the Orbifold Tarot, and that's the only deck I want that remotely reminds me of like geometric, because it looks like atoms and shit, so it reminds me of that. So yeah, like I'm not a sacred geometry, I'm not any of that. Another thing is I'm not a big numerology person, so decks that focus on that, I am not really with it. Like I just would rather read a book about numerology and also the numbers on regular cards, so I don't really see the point if there was a deck that had like 1 through whatever on there. I could just literally use the tarot for that. What other things? Decks that I've tried and I'm a little like so crystals. I've tried to do crystal decks. They just are not for me, and I'm just like I'll try. I've tried with like 1, 2, like 3 decks. Like it's something about crystals that just don't really resonate with me. Like maybe because I need to physically just have them as opposed to like working with the cards, but like yeah, every time I get a crystal deck it immediately kind of like leaves. Crystals are just not my thing. They're just not. Animal decks kind of fall in that, but I do have 2 animal decks now. So the Kim Kranz one, the Animal Spirit, Spirit Animal Oracle, whatever the name is, and then like the Woodland Wardens, like deck. I have those, but I'm not overly curious of I'm not overly curious about like animal decks. I think because I don't like overly anthropomorphizing, if that's how you pronounce it, animals. I kind of like the Woodland Wardens idea of like associating it maybe with more like a fable, folklore, what they archetypally represent, and then like the Kim Kranz is more archetypal too. There's not, you know, it's not like an animal in a fucking suit. Like it's not like, you know, cardinal with a bow tie. Like some, you know, like some decks like take great liberties with certain themes, and you're like, come on now, this octopus got a cane. Come on now. This swan all of a sudden can sing. Aretha Franklin. All right, yeah, cool. So animal decks. are not really my thing. But I am willing to like learn about the ones that I have. I think that's it. I definitely like as I go. Oh, plants. So plant-based decks. The Woodland Wardens has like plant, herb, spice, whatever, and animal. So I'm willing to go through that. The Liminal Spirits Oracle, I have that. After that, every plant deck, like I had an essential oils deck and it's gonna go because I feel like I'd rather just learn herbalism on an online platform as opposed to like trying to get cards and trying to figure that shit out, and just interacting with them. I think certain modalities or certain areas are better served with you. You'll learn more if you just interact with them, and I think that's kind of where it is for plants for me. And even crystals, even though I'm not the biggest crystal person, but I would rather just get an amethyst, which I already have, but I'd rather get the amethyst and work with it as opposed to like the basic generic like definitions that we assign. And sometimes you just feel like all these decks like have the same meanings, and for all that you can just get a crystal book. I already have a crystal book and just like flip through that and do like bibliomancy, you know, like go to page like 84 and then what crystal is in there, go page 105, what crystal's there, like, and you usually can probably figure out something pertaining to your life in that way. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.